I was dying at least. That's what the doctor said. And when my husband heard those words, he smiled. I'll never forget that smile. Not because it was warm, not because it was comforting, but because in that moment, I saw the truth. The real truth about the man I had loved for 15 years. But, getting ahead of myself, let me take you back to where it all started. My name is Margaret. Most people call me Maggie. I'm 52 years old, and I built my life from absolutely nothing. You see, I didn't grow up with money. Not even close. My daddy worked 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. My mama cleaned houses for rich folks on the other side of town. We never had much, but we had each other. And my parents, God rest their souls, they taught me one thing that stuck with me forever. Work hard. Save harder. Trust carefully. I wish I had listened to that last part a little more. By the time I was 30, I had started my own small bakery. Nothing fancy. Just a little shop on the corner of Main Street in a small town outside of Nashville. I called it Maggie's Sweet Corner. Original, right? But you know what? People loved it. They loved my pies, my cakes, my cinnamon rolls that could make a grown man cry, year after year. I poured everything into that business. I worked 16-hour days. I missed holidays. I barely slept. But slowly, something beautiful started to happen. The business grew. 1 shop became 2. 2 became 5. And before I knew it, I had a small chain of bakeries across Tennessee. Then Kentucky. Then Georgia. By the time I turned 45, I was worth more money than my parents could have ever imagined. I had a beautiful home on 12 acres of land. I had investments, savings, properties, everything I had ever dreamed of. But I was alone. And let me tell you something about loneliness. It doesn't care how much money you have. It doesn't care how successful you are. It creeps in at night when the house is quiet. It sits with you at dinner when there's no one across the table. It whispers in your ear that maybe, just maybe, you're going to die without ever being truly loved. That's the state I was in when I met Richard. Richard. He was charming, tall, silver hair that made him look distinguished. He had this way of looking at you like you were the only person in the room, the only person in the world we met at a charity gala. One of those fancy events where rich people pretend to care about causes while drinking expensive wine. I wasn't really into that scene, but my friend Linda had dragged me there. Maggie, you gotta get out more, she had said. You're gonna turn into a hermit. So I went. And there he was. Richard walked up to me with a glass of champagne and the most confident smile I had ever seen. You look like someone who'd rather be anywhere else, he said. I laughed. That obvious, huh? Don't worry. Me too. These things are insufferable. But the shrimp is excellent. We talked all night. He told me he was a widower, that his wife had passed away 3 years earlier from cancer, that he had been lonely ever since. He said he worked in investments but was mostly retired now. He said he was looking for something real, something genuine. I believed every single word. But here's the thing. I didn't know back then. Richard wasn't looking for love. He was looking for a target, and I walked right into his trap. We dated for a year. He was perfect, attentive, romantic. He remembered every little thing I said. He brought me flowers every week. He held doors open, pulled out chairs, treated me like a queen. Maggie, he said, one night over dinner, I know I'm not a rich man like your business associates. I know I don't have much to offer, but I love you. I really do. And I want to spend the rest of my life making you happy. My heart melted. See, I had worked so hard for so long. I had built everything on my own. And here was this man who didn't care about my money, who just wanted me. The real me. At least, that's what I thought. We got married 6 months later. Small ceremony. Just close friends. Linda was my maid of honor. She had concerns, but she didn't say much. Looking back, I wish she had. After the wedding, Richard moved into my house. My beautiful home that I had designed myself down to every last detail. He said he didn't want to change anything. He said it was perfect, just the way it was. This is your castle, Maggie, he said. I'm just lucky to be living in it. Sweet words, right? But what I didn't notice was how quickly he started inserting himself into everything. He wanted to help with my finances. Said he had experience with investments. He started coming to meetings at the bakery headquarters. Started asking questions about the business structure, about my will. I thought he was just being supportive. I was so blind. The first few years were good, or at least they seemed good. Richard was attentive. We traveled together. We laughed together. We built what I thought was a beautiful life. But then things started to change. Little things at first, he became distant, cold. He started going out more without telling me where. He got secretive with his phone. He stopped saying I love you unless I said it first. I tried to talk to him about it, but he always brushed it off. You're imagining things, Maggie? I'm just stressed. Work stuff. But here's the thing, he didn't work. He hadn't worked since we got married. He was living off my money, staying in my house, driving cars that I paid for, and I let it happen because I was scared. Scared of being alone again. Scared that maybe I wasn't lovable enough. Scared that if I pushed too hard, he would leave. Isn't that crazy? I was scared of losing a man who was using me. But I didn't know that yet. Not really. Not until that day in the hospital, it started with headaches. Bad ones. The kind that make you see spots and feel like your skull is going to split open. I ignored them for weeks. Months, actually. I was too busy with the business. Too focused on the new expansion into North Carolina. But then I collapsed. Right there in the middle of a meeting with my executive team. 1 second, I was talking about quarterly projections. And the next second, I was on the floor. I woke up in the hospital. Richard was there. Sitting in the chair beside my bed. He looked worried. Genuinely worried. And for a moment, I thought maybe I had been wrong about him. Maybe he did love me. Hey, sweetheart, he said, squeezing my hand. You gave us quite a scare. What happened? They're running tests. The doctor said they'll know more soon. I nodded, still groggy from whatever they had given me. For the next 2 days, I was poked and prodded. Mr. Is CT scans, blood tests, the whole thing. Richard stayed by my side the entire time. He held my hand. He brought me magazines. He told me everything was going to be fine. But on the 3rd day, Dr. Chen walked in with a look on her face that made my stomach drop. Mrs. Callahan, she said, sitting down across from me. We've reviewed all your test results. I felt Richard squeeze my hand tighter, and Dr. Chen took a deep breath. I'm so sorry to tell you this, but we found a mass in your brain. It's aggressive, and unfortunately, it's inoperable. The room went silent. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything but stare at her. What does that mean? Based on the progression we're seeing, we estimate you have approximately 3 days. It's 3 days, 3 days to live. The words didn't make sense. How could they? I was 52 years old. I had built an empire. I had plans, dreams. How could it all end in 3 days? Tears started rolling down my cheeks. I turned to Richard, expecting to see the same devastation on his face. But what I saw instead, what? I saw changed everything. He was smiling, not a big smile, not an obvious one, just a slight upturn of his lips. A flicker of something in his eyes that I had never seen before was that, relief. Dr. Chen excused herself to give us privacy. The moment the door closed, Richard turned to me fully. His grip on my hand loosened. And then he did something that shattered my world into a million pieces. He laughed quietly at first, then louder, like he had been holding it in and finally couldn't anymore. Richard? My voice was shaking. What? What are you doing? He wiped his eyes not from tears, but from laughter and looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. Cold, calculating, like he was looking at a check that had finally cleared. Oh, Maggie, he said, shaking his head. You have no idea how long I've been waiting for this moment. What are you talking about? He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. 3 days, sweetheart. Only 3 days. And then, finally, your house. your money, your business. It's all mine. I felt the blood drain from my face. You can't be serious. Oh, I'm very serious. He stood up, stretching like he had just finished a long nap. Did you really think I loved you, Maggie? Did you really think a man like me would fall for a plain woman like you without a reason? Every word was a knife. I've been playing the long game, he continued, pacing the room. 15 years of marriage. 15 years of pretending to care about your boring stories, your stupid pies, your pathetic need to be loved. And now it's finally paying off. I tried to speak, but nothing came out. You know what the best part is? He turned to face me, grinning. You signed everything over to me years ago. The house is in both our names. The accounts are joint. And your will, which I helped you update, remember? Leaves everything to your beloved husband in the event of your death. He made air quotes around beloved husband. He made it so easy, Maggie. So incredibly easy. I was shaking now. Whether from shock or rage, I couldn't tell. Richard, please, what? Please don't leave you. Please hold your hand while you die. He laughed again. I've done enough hand-holding for a lifetime. 3 more days and I'm free. 3 more days and I finally get what I deserve. He walked toward the door, then paused. Double quotes. Oh, and by the way, Brittany says, hi. Who, ... Who's Brittany? He smirked. My girlfriend. The one I've been seeing for the past 8 years. She's a lot younger than you, Maggie. A lot prettier, too. She's been very patient, waiting for you to die. But now we both get our happy ending. He opened the door. Rest up, sweetheart. You don't have much time left. And then he was gone. I sat there in that hospital bed, staring at the closed door. Feeling like I had been hit by a truck, everything I thought I knew. Everything I believed about my life, my marriage, my future. It was all a lie. But here's the thing about hitting rock bottom. Sometimes, when you're down there in the darkness, you find something you didn't know you had. Strength. The tears stopped. The shaking stopped. And something else took over. Something cold. Something sharp. If Richard thought he was going to walk away with everything, I had built ... He had another thing coming. I reached for my phone on the bedside table and scrolled through my contacts. There was one person who might be able to help. Someone I had known for years. Someone who had access to my house, my life, my secrets. Rosa. She had been my cleaning lady for almost a decade. A hardworking woman from Guatemala who had come to America with nothing and built a life for herself and her 2 kids. She was honest, loyal, and she noticed everything. The phone rang twice before she picked up double quotes, Mrs. Maggie. Are you okay? Mr. Richard said you were in the hospital, Rosa. I said, my voice steadier than I expected. I need your help. Of course, anything what I'm about to tell you. It's going to change everything. But if you help me, I promise you this. You will never have to work again. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Mrs. Maggie, what's going on? I took a deep breath. I'll explain everything. But first, I need you to listen very carefully. That conversation with Rosa was the beginning of something I never expected. The beginning of a plan that would turn everything upside down. But I had no idea just how far this rabbit hole was going to go. You see, what Richard didn't know was that I wasn't just some naive woman he had tricked. I had built a business from scratch. I had survived struggles he couldn't even imagine. And I wasn't about to let some two-faced con man take everything from me. Not without a fight, but what happened next? What I discovered about Richard? About the lies, the schemes, the things he had been doing behind my back for years. It was worse than I ever could have imagined, and it all started with what Rosa found in his office the very next morning. Rosa arrived at my hospital room the next morning. She looked nervous, scared even. Her hands were clutching a manila envelope so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Mrs. Maggie, she whispered, closing the door behind her. I found something. Something bad. I motioned for her to sit down. My body was weak, but my mind was sharp. sharper than it had been in years. Tell me everything. Rosa sat on the edge of the chair, glancing at the door like she expected Richard to burst through at any moment. Last night, after you called, I went to Mr. Richard's office, the one in the basement that he always keeps locked. I nodded. I knew about that room. Richard had told me it was where he kept his investment papers and that he needed privacy to work. I had never questioned it. Never pushed Dot another mistake I wouldn't make again. How did you get in? Rosa looked down at her hands. The spare key. He doesn't know I know where he hides it. Behind the painting of the horses in the hallway. Smart woman. I had hired her for a reason. And what did you find? Rosa's eyes met mine. There was something in them, fear, yes, but also anger, real anger. Everything. Mrs. Maggie, I've found everything. She opened the envelope and pulled out a stack of papers, photographs, documents, things that made my blood run cold. The first thing she showed me was a photograph. Richard with a woman, a young blonde woman who couldn't have been older than 30. They were on a beach somewhere, laughing, holding hands. The date stamp on the photo was from just 6 months ago. That's Brittany, Rosa said quietly. I've found more pictures, many more, going back years. Stared at the photo. My husband, the man I had shared a bed with for 15 years, looking happier with this stranger than he ever looked with me. But I didn't cry. Not this time. I was done crying over Richard Callahan. What else? Rosa pulled out more documents. Bank statements. Wire transfers. Records of money being moved from accounts I didn't even know existed. He's been stealing from you, Mrs. Maggie, for years. Look at this. She pointed to a series of transactions. Money moving from a joint account into a separate account I had never seen before. Then from there to another account. Then another. It's been hiding it, Rosa explained. Moving it around so you wouldn't notice. Small amounts at first. But over the years, it adds up to almost $2 million. It's $2 million, my money. Money I had earned with my own 2 hands. Money I had sacrificed everything for. And he had been siphoning it away, piece by piece, while smiling at me across the dinner table. There's more, Rosa said, her voice dropping even lower. This is the worst part. She pulled out a legal document. I recognized the format immediately. It was a life insurance policy. But not just any life. Insurance policy, it was a policy on my life. For $5 million. With Richard listed as the sole beneficiary. I never signed this, I whispered, staring at the signature at the bottom. It looked like my handwriting, but I knew. I had never seen this document before in my life. He forged it, Rosa said. Mrs. Maggie, I think he was planning this for a long time. The room started spinning. Not from my illness, but from the sheer weight of what I was learning. My husband hadn't just been cheating on me, hadn't just been stealing from me. He had been planning to profit from my death, maybe even cause it. That thought hit me like a punch to the gut. Rosa, I said slowly, did you find anything else? Anything about what he might have done to make me sick? Rosa's face went pale. I don't know, Mrs. Maggie, but there was something else in the office. A book about poisons, about things that can make people sick slowly over time, things that are hard to detect. My heart stopped. Was it possible? Had Richard been poisoning me? Suddenly, the headaches made sense. The fatigue. The way I had been feeling worse and worse over the past year, but could never figure out why. The doctors had run tests, but they had been looking for natural causes. Not murder. We need proof, I said, my voice hardening. We need to know for sure. Rosa nodded. What do you want me to do? I thought for a moment. My mind was racing, but I forced myself to stay calm, to think clearly. I had built a business empire by making smart decisions under pressure. This was no different, except this time my life was on the line. First, I said, I need you to find that book. Take pictures of every page. Then I need you to look in the kitchen, in the pantry. Anywhere Richard might have hidden something. Check the spices, the supplements, anything I've been eating or drinking regularly. Okay, and Rosa? Be careful. Don't let him catch you. If he finds out what we're doing, I didn't finish the sentence. I didn't have to dot. Rosa stood up, clutching the envelope to her chest. I'll be careful, Mrs. Maggie, I promise. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. Mrs. Maggie. Yes, when I first came to this country, I had nothing. You gave me a job when no one else would. You treated me like family. You paid for my daughter's college tuition. Her eyes were glistening. Whatever you need, I'm here. No matter what. I felt a lump form in my throat. In my darkest moment, the person standing by my side wasn't my husband. It was the woman who cleaned my house. Thank you, Rosa. Now go. We don't have much time. She left, and I was alone again. But I didn't feel alone anymore. For the first time in days, I felt something I hadn't expected to feel. Hope. The next 24 hours were the longest of my life. I lay in that hospital bed, watching the clock, waiting for updates from Rosa. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart jumped. Every time a nurse walked in, I held my breath. Meanwhile, Richard visited twice. Both times, he put on his concerned husband act, holding my hand, speaking in soft tones, telling me how much he loved me, how he couldn't imagine life without me. It took everything I had not to spit in his face. The doctors say you might have a little more time than they thought, he said during his second visit, sounding almost disappointed. Maybe a week instead of 3 days. How wonderful, I said flatly. He didn't notice my tone. Or maybe he just didn't care. I've been talking to our lawyer about your estate, he continued casually, like he was discussing the weather. Just making sure everything is in order. You know, for when, for when I die. He had the decency to look uncomfortable. I didn't want to put it that way, but that's what you meant. He sighed, patting my hand like I was a child throwing a tantrum. Maggie, sweetheart, I'm just trying to be prepared. It's what you would want, isn't it? For everything to be handled smoothly.
I stared at him, really stared, trying to find any trace of the man I thought I had married, the man who had promised to love me forever. He wasn't there. Maybe he never had been. Of course, I said finally. You're right. Thank you for taking care of everything, Richard. He smiled, that same smile from when the doctor gave me 3 days to live. That's my girl. Now get some rest. I'll be back tomorrow. He kissed my forehead, a kiss that felt like poison, and left. The moment the door closed, my phone buzzed. Rosa, found it. You need to see this. Coming now. 20 minutes later, Rosa was back in my room with a plastic bag in her hands. What is that? She held it up to the light. Inside was a small bottle, unmarked, filled with a clear liquid. I found it hidden in the back of the pantry, she said. Behind the flour containers, Mrs. Maggie, I also found the book I mentioned. There's a page that's dog-eared, about something called thallium. Thallium. I knew that word. I had read about it somewhere years ago. A heavy metal. A poison, nearly impossible to detect. Causes symptoms that look like natural illness, headaches, fatigue, hair loss, organ failure. All the things I had been experiencing. That monster, I whispered. He's been poisoning me. Rosa nodded, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Maggie. I'm so sorry I didn't notice sooner. He was always so nice to me, always smiling. I never thought. It's not your fault, I said firmly. He fooled everyone. He fooled me most of all. I took the bag from her hands and stared at the bottle. Such a small thing, such an innocent-looking thing, but inside was death. My death. Rosa, I need you to do something else for me. Anything. I need you to make a copy of this bottle. Fill another one with water or something harmless. Put it back exactly where you found it. Richard can't know we're onto him. And the real one. We keep it as evidence. Rosa nodded, understanding immediately. What else? I thought about my next steps. I was still weak, still sick from months of being poisoned. The doctors here thought I was dying of a brain tumor, but now I wasn't so sure. Maybe there was no tumor at all. Maybe it was just the poison doing its work. I need to see a different doctor, I said. Someone outside this hospital, someone Richard doesn't know about. Can you arrange that? I know someone, Rosa said. My cousin's husband, Dr. Martinez, he's at a hospital in Memphis. Very good, very trustworthy. Perfect, and one more thing. Yes. I took a deep breath. What I was about to ask was risky, but I had no choice. I need you to help me disappear. Rosa blinked. Disappear, what do you mean? Richard thinks I'm dying. He's counting on it. He's planning his whole future around my death. So let's give him what he wants. Understanding dawned on Rosa's face. You want him to think you're dead. Exactly. If he thinks I'm gone, he'll let his guard down. He'll make mistakes. And when he does... I didn't finish the sentence, but Rosa knew. When he does, I'll be there to catch him. How do we do this? Rosa asked. I have a plan, but I'm gonna need help. People I can trust. Do you know anyone else? Anyone who might have a reason to want Richard to pay for what he's done? Rosa was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that surprised me. Actually, Mrs. Maggie, there is someone who came to the house a few months ago, a young woman. She was crying. She wanted to talk to Mr. Richard, but he wasn't home. He called me later and told me never to let her in again. Who was she? She said her name was Sophie. She said she was his daughter. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. His daughter? Richard doesn't have any children. He told me his wife died before they could have kids. Rosa shook her head. I don't know what the truth is, Mrs. Maggie, but this girl, Sophie, she was very upset. She said Mr. Richard abandoned her and her mother years ago. She said he owes her. She said he ruined her life. Another lie, another secret, another victim of Richard's manipulation. How many people had he hurt? How many lives had he destroyed? Can you find her? I asked. Can you find Sophie? I'll try. I remember she left a phone number, in case Mr. Richard changed his mind about seeing her. Find her. Bring her to me. If Richard hurt her the way he hurt me, maybe she'll want to help. Rosa nodded and stood up. I'll find her, Mrs. Maggie. I'll find everyone who wants to see that man pay. She left, and I was alone again. But this time, I didn't feel helpless. I felt something else, something powerful. I felt like I was finally taking control. The next morning, Dr. Chen came to see me with an update on my condition. Mrs. Callahan, she said, looking puzzled, I have to be honest with you. Something strange is happening. What do you mean? Your latest test results, they're not what we expected. The mass we saw on your initial scans, it seems to be shrinking. I kept my face neutral, but inside I was screaming. Shrinking, is that possible? It's extremely unusual. We're running more tests, but I wanted you to know that things may not be as dire as we initially thought. I nodded slowly. Thank you, Dr. Chen. She left, and I sat there processing what she had said. The tumor was shrinking, which meant it probably wasn't a tumor at all. It was probably just inflammation from the poison. And now that I wasn't being poisoned anymore, because Richard couldn't slip anything into my food while I was in the hospital, my body was starting to heal. That monster had almost killed me, and he had done it slowly, methodically, making it look like a natural illness so no one would ever suspect him. But he had made one mistake. He had underestimated me. Later that day, Rosa returned with news. I found Sophie, she said, and Mrs. Maggie, you're gonna want to hear her story. Tell me. Rosa sat down and took a deep breath. Sophie is 28 years old. She's Richard's daughter from his first marriage. The one he told you about, the wife who supposedly died of cancer. Yes. She didn't die, Mrs. Maggie. Richard left her, left both of them. Sophie was only 3 years old. He disappeared one day and never came back. Sophie's mother struggled for years, worked herself to death trying to provide for her daughter. She passed away 5 years ago from heart failure. My chest tightened with rage. Sophie tracked Richard down a few months ago. Rosa continued. She found out he was living in a mansion, married to a wealthy woman, acting like he had never had a family before. She was devastated. She tried to confront him, but he refused to see her, told me to keep her out. That poor girl. She's angry, Mrs. Maggie, very angry, when I told her what Richard has been doing to you. She wanted to help immediately. I felt a strange connection to this young woman I had never met. Both of us had been victims of the same man. Both of us had been lied to, manipulated, abandoned. But together, maybe we could fight back. Where is she now? I asked. Waiting outside. Do you want to meet her? I nodded. Bring her in. A few minutes later, the door opened, and Sophie walked in. She was pretty, blonde hair, blue eyes. She looked nothing like Richard, thank God. But there was something in her expression, a hardness, a pain that came from years of being rejected by her own father. Mrs. Callahan, she said, standing awkwardly by the door. I'm sorry for what my father did to you. It's Maggie, and none of this is your fault. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. I spent my whole life wondering why he left, wondering if I did something wrong. And now I know he never cared about anyone but himself. I reached out my hand. Come sit with me, Sophie. We have a lot to talk about. She crossed the room and sat beside me. For a moment, we just looked at each other, two women connected by the same betrayal. Rosa told me you want to make him pay, Sophie said quietly. I want that too, more than anything. I nodded. Then let's do it together, but I'm gonna need you to trust me, and I'm gonna need you to be patient. Can you do that? Sophie's jaw tightened with determination. I've been waiting 25 years for justice. I can wait a little longer. I smiled, the first real smile in days. Good, because what I have planned. It's gonna take a few steps. But by the time we're done, Richard Callahan is gonna lose everything he's ever stolen. Sophie leaned in closer. What do you need me to do? I was about to tell her when my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Mrs. Callahan, I know what your husband is doing. I have proof. Meet me at 3 p.m. tomorrow at the address below. Come alone. A friend. I stared at the message, my heart pounding. Who was this? How did they know about Richard? And what kind of proof did they have? I looked up at Rosa and Sophie, both watching me with concern. What is it? Rosa asked. I turned the phone so they could read the message. Looks like we have another player in this game, I said, and I have no idea whose side they're on. But I was about to find out. The address in the message led to a small coffee shop on the outskirts of town. I wasn't supposed to leave the hospital. The doctors wanted to keep me under observation, but I had bigger things to worry about than medical protocols. Rosa drove me. Sophie sat in the back, watching the road behind us like she expected Richard to appear at any moment. Are you sure about this, Mrs. Maggie? Rosa asked for the third time. This could be a trap. It could be, I admitted. But whoever sent that message knows something. And right now, information is the only weapon I have. We pulled into the parking lot at exactly 2:55 p.m. The coffee shop was small, quiet, the kind of place where people came to be left alone. I'm going in alone, I said, if something happens. We're coming with you, Sophie interrupted firmly. I didn't come this far to sit in a car. I looked at her, this young woman who barely knew me, who had every reason to walk away. But she was here, fighting alongside me. Fine, but let me do the talking. We walked in together. The shop was nearly empty. A teenager behind the counter, an old man reading a newspaper in the corner, and in the back booth, facing the door, a woman. She looked about my age, maybe a few years younger, dark hair streaked with gray, sharp eyes that had seen too much. She was dressed simply jeans, a blue sweater, but there was something about her posture, something that said she wasn't someone to mess with. When she saw us approach, she didn't look surprised. She just nodded toward the empty seats across from her. Mrs. Callahan, I'm glad you came. Who are you? The woman smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. My name is Denise, Denise Parker, And about 15 years ago, I was exactly where you are now. I froze. What do you mean? Denise leaned back in her seat, her gaze distant. I mean that Richard Callahan married me, told me he loved me, made me believe I was the luckiest woman in the world, and then he tried to kill me for my money. The words hit like a thunderbolt. Sophie gasped beside me. Rosa crossed herself. You were married to Richard, I managed to say. For 3 years, before whoever came before you, I was his first target. At least the first one I know about. I sat down slowly, my legs suddenly weak. What happened? Denise's jaw tightened. The same thing that's happening to you. He was charming at first. Perfect, even. Then things started changing. I got sick, headaches, fatigue. The doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. Thallium, I whispered. Denise nodded. I didn't know it at the time. No one did. I thought I was dying of some mysterious illness. Richard was so supportive, so caring. He held my hand every night, telling me how much he loved me, how he couldn't live without me. Her voice cracked with bitterness. And then one day, I overheard him on the phone, talking to some woman, laughing about how much money he was gonna get when I finally kicked the bucket. Those were his exact words. I felt sick, not from the poison, from the realization that this pattern, this evil, calculated pattern, had been repeated over and over. What did you do? I ran. I took what little I could carry and I disappeared. Changed my name. Moved across the country. I was so scared he would find me and finish what he started. But you survived. Barely. It took me years to recover from the poisoning, years to rebuild my life. She looked at me with an intensity that made my spine straighten. But I never stopped watching him, never stopped waiting for the day I could finally make him pay. How did you find out about me? Denise reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. I have a friend who works in the county clerk's office. She alerts me whenever Richard's name shows up on any official documents, marriage licenses, property transfers, that kind of thing. When I saw he had gotten married again, I knew it was only a matter of time before he did the same thing to you. She slid the folder across the table. I've been gathering evidence for years, bank records, phone logs, witness statements, everything I could find about Richard's past. I opened the folder and felt my breath catch. There were photographs, documents, court records, stories of women, at least 4 others, who had been married to Richard over the past 25 years. Some had survived like Denise. Some had been less lucky. Oh my God, Sophie whispered, looking at the papers. How many people has he hurt? Too many, Denise said grimly, but it ends now. With you. I looked up at her. Why me? Why not go to the police yourself? Denise's expression darkened. I tried, multiple times, but Richard is smart. He covers his tracks. By the time I escaped, he had already cleaned out our accounts and made it look like I was the unstable one. The police didn't believe me. No one did. She leaned forward, her voice dropping. But you're different, Mrs. Callahan. You have resources, you have a business empire, you have people who will listen to you, and most importantly, you have current evidence. That bottle of poison Rosa found, that's the key to everything. I thought about the bottle sitting safely in Rosa's car, the evidence that could finally bring Richard down. What exactly are you proposing? I asked. Denise smiled, a real smile this time. I'm proposing we work together. Combine your current evidence with my historical research. Build a case so airtight that Richard can't talk his way out of it. And then we make sure he spends the rest of his miserable life behind bars. I looked at Rosa, at Sophie, at this stranger who had once been in my shoes. 4 women, all connected by the same monster. I'm in, Sophie said without hesitation. Me too, Rosa added. I took a deep breath. Then let's do this, let's take him down. Over the next few days, we worked in secret. Denise had connections I never could have imagined. Former law enforcement officers who had tried to investigate Richard before. Lawyers who specialized in fraud cases. Even a private investigator who had been tracking Richard's movements for years. The picture that emerged was horrifying. Richard had been doing this for over 2 decades. He targeted wealthy, lonely women, charmed them, married them, then slowly poisoned them while positioning himself to inherit everything. Some women had died, at least 2, maybe more. Their deaths had been ruled natural causes, brain tumors, organ failure, heart attacks. But now, with the evidence we were gathering, it was clear they had all been murdered. I thought about those women, women like me, women who had just wanted to be loved, and my heart broke for every single one of them. But the sadness didn't last. It was quickly replaced by determination. Richard Callahan would pay for what he had done, all of it. Meanwhile, Richard had no idea what was coming. He continued visiting me at the hospital, playing his role perfectly. He brought flowers. He held my hand. He whispered sweet words of love and devotion. And I smiled right back at him. Because what he didn't know was that I was recovering. Each day, my body got a little stronger. The poison was leaving my system. The inflammation in my brain was decreasing. The doctors were amazed by my miraculous improvement. But I made sure they didn't tell Richard the full truth. As far as he knew, I was still dying, just a little slower than expected. "It's a shame, sweetheart," he said one afternoon, sitting by my bed. "You're fighting so hard, but the doctors say it's only a matter of time." "I know," I said weakly, putting on my best dying voice. "I just want to make sure everything is in order for when I'm gone." Richard's eyes lit up. He couldn't hide it. Even now, even after everything, he couldn't hide his greed. "Don't worry about anything," he said, patting my hand. "I've taken care of everything. The lawyers have updated your will. The accounts are all set. You just focus on resting." "You're so good to me, Richard." That's what husbands are for. I wanted to slap him. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him exactly what I thought of him and his lies. But not yet. The time wasn't right. Soon, though, very soon. The day of reckoning came on a Tuesday. I had been discharged from the hospital the day before. Richard drove me home, helped me into bed, and told me he would be in his office if I needed anything. "Just rest, sweetheart," he said, kissing my forehead. "I'll check on you in a few hours." The moment he left the room, I got up. My strength had returned more than I had let on. I had been exercising in secret at the hospital, walking the halls at night when no one was watching. My body was still weak, but it was strong enough for what I needed to do. I picked up my phone and sent a message to Denise. "It's time." 15 minutes later, the doorbell rang. I heard Richard's footsteps as he went to answer it, then voices, confused at first, then angry. What the hell is going on here? I walked slowly down the stairs, savoring every moment. Richard was standing in the foyer, surrounded by people. Denise, Sophie, Rosa, 2 police officers, and a woman I didn't recognize until I realized she must be Brittany, Richard's girlfriend, looking absolutely terrified. When Richard saw me walking down the stairs, his face went white. "Maggie, what are you doing out of bed? You should be." "Dying," I finished for him. "Sorry to disappoint you, sweetheart, but I'm not going anywhere." His eyes darted around the room, calculating, searching for an escape. "I don't understand. The doctors said I was being poisoned, slowly, methodically, by someone who wanted me dead." I stopped at the bottom of the stairs, my gaze locked on his. "By you, Richard." "That's ridiculous. I would never." "We found the thallium," Sophie interrupted, stepping forward. "In the pantry, behind the flour, just like you always hide things, Dad." Richard flinched at the word Dad. "Sophie, what are you doing here? I told you never to." "Never to contact you again. Never to tell anyone you abandoned me and Mom. Never to expose you for the monster you really are." Sophie's voice was shaking with years of suppressed rage. "It's over. We know everything." Denise stepped forward next. "Remember me, Richard, your first wife, the one who got away." Richard's face went from white to gray. "Denise, but you're supposed to be." "Dead like all the others." Denise shook her head. "Sorry to disappoint you. I've spent 15 years gathering evidence against you, every lie, every crime, every woman you've hurt. It's all documented. One of the police officers stepped forward. Richard Callahan, you're under arrest for attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent. No, Richard lunged toward the door, but the second officer caught him easily. You can't do this, he screamed, struggling against the handcuffs being placed on his wrists. I'm innocent. This is a setup. Maggie, tell them I love you. I walked up to him slowly, looked him straight in the eyes. You never loved me, Richard. You never loved anyone but yourself. And now you're gonna spend the rest of your life paying for it. His face twisted with fury. You'll regret this. I'll get the best lawyers. I'll fight this. You'll never. Oh, I don't think so, said a new voice. Everyone turned to look at Brittany, who had been silent until now. She was young, pretty, but there was a hardness in her eyes that I recognized, the hardness of someone who had been betrayed. The night Richard told me about his plan, I recorded everything on my phone, Brittany said, her voice trembling. He told me exactly how he was going to poison you, how he'd done it before, how he would inherit everything and we would run away together. She pulled out her phone and held it up. I didn't want to believe it at first. I thought he loved me. I thought we were going to have a future together. Tears streamed down her face. But then I started looking into his past, and I realized I was just the next victim in line. Once he got tired of me, once I wasn't useful anymore, I would end up just like the others. Richard's face crumbled. Brittany, baby, you don't understand. I understand perfectly, she spat. I understand that you're a liar and a killer, and I was stupid enough to believe you cared about me. She turned to the police officers. I'll testify. I'll tell you everything, every single thing he ever told me. Richard sagged in the officer's grip. For the first time since I'd known him, he had nothing to say. No charming words, no manipulative explanations, no way out. Get him out of my house, I said quietly. The officers dragged him toward the door, but just before they reached it, Richard turned back one last time. This isn't over, Maggie. I'll get out of this, and when I do. When you do, I'll be waiting, I said calmly. But something tells me you're gonna be waiting a very, very long time. The door closed behind him. And just like that, it was over. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Rosa burst into tears and threw her arms around me. You did it, Mrs. Maggie. You really did it. I hugged her back, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Relief, joy, freedom. Sophie came over next, hesitant at first, but I pulled her into the hug too. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for letting me be part of this. You're part of this family now, I said, whether you like it or not. She laughed through her tears. I think I can live with that. Denise stood back, watching with a satisfied smile. When our eyes met, she nodded. It's finally done, she said. After all these years, it's done. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Richard's trial made national headlines. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Witness after witness came forward, women he had victimized, families of those who hadn't survived. The prosecution built a case so airtight that even Richard's expensive lawyers couldn't find a crack. He was found guilty on all counts, multiple charges of attempted murder, fraud, forgery, conspiracy. The judge sentenced him to life in prison, without the possibility of parole. When the verdict was read, I was sitting in the courtroom between Rosa and Sophie. We held hands as the words echoed through the room. Life in prison. Justice, finally. But even more important than the trial was what happened after. My health continued to improve. Within 3 months, I was back to full strength. The doctors couldn't believe it. They said I was a medical miracle. But I knew the truth. I wasn't a miracle. I was just a woman who had refused to give up. I returned to running my business, but things were different now. I had a new perspective on life. I worked less. I spent more time with the people who mattered. Rosa, true to my promise, never had to work again. I set up a trust fund for her and her children, but she insisted on staying by my side anyway. "You're not getting rid of me that easily, Mrs. Maggie," she said with a grin. Sophie moved in with me. It felt strange at first, living with my ex-husband's daughter, but we quickly became close. She reminded me of myself at her age, determined, resilient, ready to take on the world. I helped her start her own business, a small consulting firm that helped victims of fraud rebuild their lives. It was hard work, but she loved every minute of it. And Denise, she finally found the peace she had been searching for. With Richard behind bars, she no longer had to look over her shoulder. She traveled the country, speaking to support groups, sharing her story, helping other survivors find their voices. We stayed in touch, all of us, the 4 women who had taken down a monster. Sometimes, late at night, I would think about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the pain, the fear. It had been the worst experience of my life. But it had also led me to something beautiful. A new family, a new purpose, a new beginning. 1 year to the day after Richard's conviction, I threw a party at my house. Not a big fancy gala, just a small gathering of the people I loved. Rosa and her children, Sophie and her new boyfriend, a kind young man who treated her like gold, Denise, even Brittany, who had become a close friend after everything we'd been through together. We sat around the table, laughing, eating, sharing stories. The house that had once felt like a prison now felt like a home. Sophie raised her glass. "A toast," she said, "to Maggie, the strongest woman I know." "To Maggie," everyone echoed. I felt tears prick my eyes. Happy tears, the best kind. "No," I said, raising my own glass. "To all of us, to surviving, to fighting back, to never giving up no matter how dark things get." We clinked glasses and drank. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, I stood on my porch and looked up at the stars. I thought about the woman I had been a year ago, scared, dying, betrayed by the man she loved. And I thought about the woman I was now, strong, healthy, surrounded by people who truly cared about her. The journey had been painful, but it had led me here, to this moment, to this life. And for the first time in as long as I could remember, I felt truly happy. I smiled up at the stars. "I made it," I whispered to no one in particular. "I really made it." And I knew, deep in my heart, that the best was yet to come. Because sometimes, the darkest chapters of our lives lead to the brightest endings. And this was just the beginning of my happy ending. I walked back inside, closed the door, and smiled. A big, wide, genuine smile. The kind of smile that comes from knowing you've won, not just survived, but truly won. And I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that I would keep smiling for the rest of my days. Because Margaret Louise Callahan wasn't just a survivor. She was a fighter. And fighters always find their way home. The end. I hope you enjoyed this emotional journey. This completes the full 9,000-word story following the competitor script structure with the explosive hook, rising tension, midpoint cliffhanger, big twist, reversal, and heartwarming happy ending. The story features Maggie's transformation from victim to victor, with the help of Rosa, Sophie, Denise, and even Brittany turning against Richard.